Chair recognizes Representative Smithee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. And it's been a long day, and we've heard today about the perspective of the lobbyists for the hospitals, the lobbyists for the doctors, the lobbyists for the abortion clinic operators, and rightfully we've talked a lot about the mothers, the expectant mothers, and the women of Texas. But I want you to focus with me for the next couple of minutes, and I'll be short, the next couple of minutes on that little baby, because we haven't talked a lot today about the little baby. And arguably that little baby is one of the two most important characters in this whole series of events. We ought to be talking about that little baby, and primarily we're talking about a baby at the gestational age of 20 to 24 weeks. And let me tell you a little bit about what I learned about that baby a week ago tonight, sitting in the State Affairs Committee. At 3 weeks, that little baby developed a detectable heartbeat. At 6 weeks gestational age, there was a recognizable EEG wave. The little brain was working. It was beginning in the primitive stage of working. At 9 to 10 weeks, that little baby had developed a large part of her glandular system, her thyroid, her adrenal glands that she will have the rest of her life, however long that may be. By 12 to 13 weeks, that little baby, that little girl or boy, has developed fingernails, can be observed sucking their thumb. They'll recoil from pain, and they've got the fingerprints on their fingers that they'll have for the rest of their lives, a unique set of fingerprints. The Bible tells us that that little baby is being fearfully and wonderfully knit together by God Himself inside that mother's womb. By 13 to 14 weeks, and this is significant, that little baby has began to develop pain receptors in her nervous system. By 15 weeks, she has taste buds. And the reason we know this is because the baby will swallow occasionally, and you can detect a reaction when they swallow something that tastes bad or good. The baby has taste buds. By 16 weeks, that baby has eyebrows, eyelashes beginning to grow, and can grasp things with those little hands and fingers. By 20 weeks, and that's what we're talking about in this bill, that little baby is 8 to 10 inches long, and that's what makes this procedure so difficult. It's 8 to 10 inches long. And you know, at 20 to 24 weeks, that little baby has been shown to be able to recognize her mother's voice. She inside that womb, she may show excitement. Her heart leaps for excitement when she hears her mother's voice. Or it may show concern when she hears her mother upset about something. But that, you know, overall, that place has always been, that womb has been the most secure place in the universe for humanity. Think about it. They talk about the fetal position that people get into when they get scared. That fetus is, that baby in that position is in the safest place, surrounded by amniotic fluid in the loving confines of her mother. And that's what makes this procedure so bad. Let me just tell you that last week at the meeting, I was talking to the physician who was representing the American Congress of OBGYNs, and I asked him, how do they abort babies at that age, at that gestational age? And he said, normally it is the D&E method. That stands for dilation and extraction. Dilation means they dilate the cervix. Extraction means they extract the baby from the mother's womb. I asked him to describe the procedure. He's the physician who was testifying against the bill. And I asked him to describe the procedure, and after a moment he said, it's just too gruesome. I don't want to describe it. And so he either couldn't or wouldn't describe it in front of the committee. So I did some research, and I want to tell you a couple of things about that gruesome procedure. It is done with several instruments, one of which includes a suction catheter that removes the amniotic fluid, that protection that little baby has had for the first 4 months of pregnancy. The second tool is what is referred to as a SOFR clamp or SOFR clamp. It is a clamp that is inserted through the cervix down into the child. One doctor described it as a clamp with little jaw teeth that reaches something, and once it reaches it will not let it go. And so this clamp, this procedure is a blind procedure. that doctor doesn't know where he's going with that. Sometimes it punctures the wall of the uterus. But what he's going for is for that baby with this jaw, this clamp, and he grabs pieces of that little baby and pulls the pieces out. That's how the baby's life is terminated. And it is not unusual to see little legs come out, little hands come out. Remember, I don't want to talk about this. I'm not enjoying this discussion. I know you're not either, but it's what we're talking about in this bill. It's what we're here for. And so you have the sulfur clamp that pulls out this little piece of baby, flesh by flesh, and then you have what's called a curette, which is a hook that's used to scrape the rest of this uterus to remove the rest of the remains. It's a blind procedure as these body parts come out. The doctor generally makes about $600 for 15 minutes of work. And the victim of this procedure is if the abortion is successful, the victim is always, it's fatal. Secondly, the victim is always innocent. She hadn't done anything to anybody. And third, she's always defenseless. Have you ever been in a defenseless situation? That baby is absolutely defenseless. It's one of the most barbaric, when you think about it, the most barbaric, brutal, and painful exercises that one man inflicts on another. We would never do that to another human being. I think all of us wouldn't do that. We wouldn't do that to a terrorist. We wouldn't do that kind of an inhumane thing. What have we become? What has led us to this point where we have human on human violence that is that barbaric? I'm sorry to talk about it, but that's what this is about. How can we tolerate, much less defend, this practice? You know, last week, or this past week, I ran across a quote from President Johnson back during the Civil Rights Movement, and it hit me. It said, President Johnson said, "The vote is the most powerful instrument ever devised by man for breaking down injustice." And members, I would say that this abortion at any stage, but at 20 to 24 weeks, is probably one of the greatest injustices that's ever faced humankind. And you and I are very fortunate that we have a vote, and we're able to exercise it here in just a few moments. And my prayer for all of you would be that we do the right thing, that we do the right thing to end this injustice. You know, I've been here almost 30 years. And the privilege that I have to vote for this bill, which I plan on doing in a few moments, is one of the greatest privileges, maybe probably the greatest privilege that I've ever experienced here in the Texas legislature. And it's something that I'll be proud about for pretty much the rest of my life. Thank you all very much.